I'm Emily Page, and you're watching Start to Sold. Today, I have an exciting interview with Janice DaVailio, who is a co-owner of the Huntington Dermatology office. She's a dermatologist, an entrepreneur, and she's here to share her experience growing her business in the midst of a pandemic and after a pandemic. Janice, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks, Emily. It's really exciting to talk about this. It's been quite a crazy year, and I'm so energized and happy to share my journey with your people, our people.
Our people, yeah. So everyone who's watching is interested in growing their own medical practice or a practice of a small business of any sort. You'll get something out of watching this. So Janice and her business partner, Seth, were sitting in the midst of pre-pandemic world and looking at how much they built, like an incredible business, and they were asking themselves, what is next? And they were like not sure about that. So they actually hired me as a business growth consultant. And so Janice, would you mind sharing with everybody sort of where you were before the pandemic started and where, what you had built so everyone understands where you were and what you were kind of looking for in the future?
So I've been in private practice with Seth Vaccaro for 30 years and very successul private practice, really happy to be owning our own business, to caring for our own patients. He's a little bit older than I am. We don't want to admit that too much, but our children were gone, and all of a sudden you start thinking of, what about the future? Is it retirement? Am I too young to retire? Do I just let the practice go? What about my patients? And funny you should mention, I was on vacation, the last vacation I took in February of 2020 with a childhood friend. And I was just talking about this to her. And she said, you need a business consultant. And I was like, really? And of course, that's where you and I contacted you. And my partner was up for that. And it was an opportunity and a time right when the pandemic was hitting. What is it that we want to do? What is it that we want out of our personal lives and our professional lives? And are we just going to close up shop, quit, let the practice go? Or are we going to zoom up and energize and just build the practice and go forward for the future? So we needed a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, and we'd never really had a plan because we were just going along. And we were very fortunate, I guess, that way. And so you helped us identify our personal and professional visions. And so we both looked at that individually, met them together, and decided, yes, we want to grow our practice. And how are we going to do this in a pandemic? We must be crazy. But I think part of it was, if it all goes downhill, it all goes downhill. But we're not, this is the time to do it. And we might as well just do it. We had a good reputation, have a good reputation in the community, taught at the local university, at the hospital. And we realized, okay, that means we have to modernize if we're going to go forward. And so the first thing we did was to revise or update our website, and with the idea of also giving people a message, hey, we're here, we're open during the pandemic, we're here for you. And so in updating and revising the website, we were also thinking of, how do we convey who we really are and convey that to the community and to people who don't know us. We always went by reputation and word of mouth referral, but we really wanted to open ourselves up to everybody.
Well, and as you're saying this, I mean, for anyone else who's watching it, I think watching this video, I think that it's interesting that you guys built a business that was so successful, was able to have multiple staff. You have a beautiful office in Pasadena. You have some celebrity clients who we will not name here for their privacy, but you've become awarded and acknowledged in your industry as a speaker, doing research and at different universities. And so you have been focusing tremendously on being excellent practitioners. And being an excellent practitioner is actually a completely different mentality, focus, thing that you're investing into yourself, then focusing on building processes that build a business. So you can be the most masterful dermatologist or health practitioner and actually not have nobody in the world know that you're trustworthy, that you're right next door, that people love working with you because you're so busy being that practitioner. And so that was the interesting thing that we were able to talk about, is identifying, who you are, what makes you guys wonderful and unique, and then how do we really communicate that to your audience in a way that's a process, so that you are not doing more sales, or that's going to distract your resources from being the doctor that you really are. And that's what was so interesting about redefining your website and your social media, is it was helpful to kind of think through that as a tool that you could use to reach out to people without having to do more work.
Well, exactly. And the fact of the matter is that we go to medical school, we do our residency, we go into medicine because we're interested in helping people and being in medicine, but we don't go to business school. And so that tends to be the secondary thing we think of, but we need to actually be able to admit we're in a business, we're caring for people. We holistically care for them, but we are running a business, and we have employees, we have insurance, and the pandemic, taught us about, we want to support our employees. We have a responsibility. So it is a business. And in medicine, that's often a bad name. And so balancing that and looking at it in a healthy way is important to us.
Yes. So the website and the social media were the first two things that we looked at together, and that you guys invested some time and thought into. And then after that, we were talking about how sales is also one of the things you weren't ever taught in medical school. And it's something that's really misunderstood. Reaching out to people who are existing clients is actually the fastest way to increase your sales, because people who have already bought from you before already have experience, you like and trust you. And so we talked about how could you go about considering your past clients. And so what was the third thing that you did that helped you to make a difference with your business?
Well, we contacted existing patients, and that was a little challenging because, of course, we were still on paper charts. And so we had some email information, and we did have the bank of phone numbers. And so we were able to set up robocalls to send to patients to tell them, we are open and in practice. There is a pandemic, there's a stay-at-home order, but for urgent things, emergent things, we can take care of you. We can take care of your infections and your lacerations. And so it was reaching out, just simple thing, and letting people know that we were open. Because what else did we have to do?
Well, and we're all sitting around in quarantine, and yet people still, need help. And I think something that's so interesting for people who are watching this, or who have a business and who are not educated in sales, or who are scared of sales, sometimes sales is as simple as just showing up, telling people what you do, and offering to help them. It doesn't have to be grimy or gripey. It's literally offering help. And if you come at it with that perspective when you're sending out an email or following up with people, it's going to be received that way. And in the heart with which you're sending it, it will be received that way, as an offer to help. And so that can increase sales and benefit the people that need your help, which is such a great thing, that it created results for you. And then talk about how you dealt with telemedicine. You said that was the fourth thing that you felt helped to grow your business.
Well, it allowed us to be able to see patients who couldn't come in. And now everyone's doing telemedicine, and we're a year later. At that point in time, we weren't. And I had elderly patients, who wanted to be seen. And we weren't even sure that it could be reimbursed by insurance yet. And it was one of my patients who's 75 who called and said, honey, I don't care. I'm paying for the visit, and I know how to do iPhone. And I don't know how to do Zoom. So we can iPhone our, our conversation and our visit, because I really need your help. And that just expanded in my mind. Okay, there are platforms we can use that we can share with patients that are secure. And then Medicare, 2 days later, allowed all of that to happen. And we were ready and prepared and had the mental attitude of, we're here at work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, because I'm paying the rent anyway. So I will take all calls of anybody who comes. And then people knew. And then the wife, the husband wanted to be seen, and the daughter's in the background waving, I want my appointment next. And it was really kind of sweet, given what we were going through and how crazy the world was, that these people really felt comfortable doing a video visit and being taken care of. And so again, it just broadened our minds, and in broadening your minds, it just makes you open for new things that are going to happen.
I like that. And I think that's helpful for people to understand that sales really can just be showing up and making sure people know that you're there to help them. And it takes some of the fear away for anyone who's worried about growing and doesn't know how to do it. And then you mentioned that there was a fifth thing about your colleagues, and you said that a lot of the people around you were closed. You and your office was large enough and also had the procedures in place to be safe. So how did you involve, other colleagues who were closed?
So we just called our colleagues and we said, we're here, and wasn't criticizing people who weren't open. Some people have small children that they had to take care of. Some people had elderly parents that came to live with them, other doctors. My children were out of the house, and we just called our colleagues and said, we're here to see patients, to see your patients, anything that's skin related, any infection. So we broadened the appeal within our same scope of medicine. We weren't doing anything that we hadn't done before, but I actually had a patient call me from the gas station and say, I slipped and fell and cut myself, my whole face, and I'm coming in to have you suture me because I am not going to the emergency room. And so that was good. We could be helpful, and they remember that now.
I love that. I think that's so important, to reach out to other people that we wouldn't be competing with. That's another key element of sales and growth. And so that was your fifth strategy for growing. And then we had a sixth one, and this one I thought was so funny because everybody in the world, so many practices that currently exist that are huge and big are on paper. And so what was the sixth thing you did that helped you to grow?
Yeah, we went to electronic medical records, and this is crazy because we are both over 50 plus. And the comment had been, oh, if you're over 50, don't bother going into electronic medical records. Just keep the paper charts till you retire. We're a single dermatology practice. We don't need electronic medical records. But we decided if we're going to do this, this is the time to do it. And it wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be. Needless to say, I have to admit that. We chose a dermatology specific software. Our employees were excited because they saw us as moving forward in this difficult time. They were like, you guys are moving forward. And we just took it as a jump in with 2 feet. This is the way we're going to do it. So we could do telemedicine with this. We could prescribe prescriptions electronically. That allowed us, if sometimes you're at home and you need to do something, you can. Most of the time, we don't want to work 24 hours, 7 days a week, but this was a pandemic. And so, yes, we did it. And I'm glad we did it.
I just think that is so eye-opening when you said that it was assigned to your team that you were moving forward. And that's something, so besides the fact that it probably saved a lot of time and made your life easier, made your clients' lives easier, that's something else that's really something I didn't even fully realize, is that indicating to your team so that they can be a part of this growth process. These little things help the team to get on board, to feel like we're all rowing that big direction. So I'm glad it was so helpful. And you are standing in front of something that is like intentionally placed for everybody here watching. It's so, and I've actually used, had this done on my face before. So can you share the 7th thing that you did to grow?
Well, we bought a new device, although true confessions, we had bought it before the pandemic. And this special device does several things that we had done before when we rented an intense pulse light machine or IPL machine to be able to do once a week on patients, and thought there was just really not enough return on the investment. Um, but the technology had improved, and we really felt like this is something we would want to do. But it also has, it's called the Optimus. It also has a radio frequency device called Morpheus, and it's a shrink wrap tightening of the skin. And so let me be clear that we were not doing this during a pandemic when, cosmetic procedures were very quiet during that time. We had to be really safe about double masking and keeping people at a distance, and really respecting that. But now here in California, our numbers have really gone down. And it's so exciting that everybody coming in, I'd say 95% of the people are vaccinated, and people have been doing Zoom calls, and what a surprise. Everybody's ready for a rejuvenation. And so, right. And so we're doing procedures that we weren't doing very much of before. Now we're doing it all the time. And people are asking us because we're the doctors, we're the experts. They're not going to the salons, and maybe they will, but they trust us. They saw us during the pandemic, and they want to come in and have us take care of their cosmetic needs. And so you don't have to be a doctor that does cosmetic things that is out of your scope. You can hire a nurse to do it, but you need to have the responsibility of following up on that. But there are ways to do it. You can do some in-office dispensing of supplements that go along with your practice for hair loss, for nails, for immune system. They're looking to their doctor for that. And so they should come to the experts. And that broadened our minds because we weren't usually like that. But people appreciate it. And then you just need to be true to yourself in terms of, are we huge entrepreneurs that are going to have 5 offices? That isn't. We love the patient interaction. We love that. So that is where we're going to stay. But it allows us to offer what patients are asking for. And yeah, it's great. It's great to see people wanting to live.
And I love what you're describing and how you're describing the evolution or the change and the thoughtfulness in your own mind, you and Seth, as you discuss this, because I think other medical practitioners can feel that they should not do cosmetic elements of the practice and just focus on being a medical doctor. And I understand where that mentality comes from. We all, we want to differentiate ourselves from people who are selling non-authentic beauty supplements and things like that are not real. But on the other hand, if your patient wants these things, and if you don't offer them, they're going to go to a charlatan. And that is the number one reason why it's important that you as a medical practitioner offer these things and have an opinion about it, because it's not just about removing a cancerous, mole. Sometimes it's about fixing something so that you do feel good about yourself. And if you, as the doctor who a patient should and can trust, can have an opinion about these things, you're actually doing a service for your patient. They're not going to a med spa that maybe doesn't have an authentic expert to really understand what's best for that person's skin.
Absolutely. I mean, if that's what the pandemic has taught us, is now that we're coming out, people understand looking good is feeling good. Taking care of your body is important. Supplements, vitamins, feeling good, living life in an authentic way, and in a way that suits our patients. Yes. Not giving them something that we live not too far from Hollywood. So not giving them something that pushes them out of their comfort level. We also live right next to, we're right next to Caltech. So there's a scientific basis also. So we feel very, very, very fortunate and really excited that this has gone the way it has. And then we've done a tiny bit of advertising in our office. And this is still a process, something that we have learned, this word process instead of medical school. Let's do this, we do this. It's a process. And so our in-office advertising, we're in the middle of doing very respectful before and after pictures, just a few here and there, because patients are asking. And this lovely little machine here came with a huge poster, and my staff just put it outside the office and people are asking, and I just chuckle because I would never have done that. And people are saying, I want this. So that was very, again, it's not a billboard. It's not a television commercial. We're just letting our people, our patients know what we offer.
Right. And that by itself was enough to increase sales. And so everyone who's watching this and interested in growing their business, it's just, some of these things are so basic. It's just making sure that it's clearly communicated what you offer. And you mentioned also that there's a 10th thing that you did that helped you to probably bring in a few other people. It had to do with the scope of the services that you were offering. You want to explain what that was and what you did?
So we hired somebody who can do something that we can't, and that's a Mohs surgeon. And that has an area of expertise we don't have, but offers something that patients need. And so it was beneficial to both of us, doctors, or all of us doctors. It was beneficial in that person, Mohs surgeon, could do the Mohs surgery, very talented. And then patients could be treated in our office, which they really appreciated, especially during the pandemic. They know us. And so again, offering something we didn't normally offer, making it mutually beneficial financially for the two, doctors, and then making it beneficial to the patient.
So those are 10 things that anyone watching can actually apply to themselves, even outside of the pandemic, because they're growth specific. But I do want to ask you this question so that you can share a little bit more about, the beginning genesis, but like, what's the hardest part of, starting a dermatology practice? What do you feel you've learned from this entire journey?
In starting a practice, I have to tell you, I actually didn't start the practice. I joined my partner when I finished school, but in trying to find somebody that you can align your goals with. So it hasn't been a very, it wasn't too dramatic in terms of the 30 years. It's been nice and smooth that way. If you start a practice, you have to have the capital for it, or you have to have, my spouse worked. And so I didn't have to have the cash right away, but that's what you need when you start a practice. I mean, there's a whole long list of things that you need: the location, the money, the staff, a lot of energy to start. So for me, it was just natural fit to join a practice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's a unique and special thing. And I love how your practice is now continuing to grow as you continue to lead forward. So when you evaluate other people joining your practice, you now have a different perspective on the other end. And when you talk to people, what do you tell them is the hardest part of having a private practice dermatology office?
So I think the hardest part is the business aspect, because we're doctors, we're like this. So we didn't go to business school. And the aspect of hiring and firing employees, that is the hardest part. It's the people part, but it's the hardest part. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you're focused for so long in your life on just being an expert in the medical field that and they don't teach you business. And so that's why it's sometimes helpful to get mentors, find coaches, read books about business, because that's, like you said, that can be the hardest part. What do you think is the best part of private practice dermatology?
So my list can be this long or this long. Um, Going through this process really made me realize what is the best part about private practice. It's good and bad, but we are our own boss. And so if something goes wrong, I have myself to blame. I can take the time off that I need to. And let's face it, when you're in private practice, you don't take a lot of time off, because if you don't work, you don't get paid. But my friends who work for other large organizations have to put in their vacations or their time off 6 or 9 months in advance. And if your child has an event at school and you want to go to that event, you can work your schedule around it. If there's an emergency, you can work your schedule around it so that you can have the family time. So being able to be creative and have your practice how you want it. So you're responsible for it, but it's your practice. It's something you've created and built, and it has your personality.
Yeah, the freedom, I think, is always, for every entrepreneur in any category, is probably the most compelling piece, to see who you can be and what you can become. And you also mentioned so many times how the personal relationship that you and Seth have, and any other doctor that's in your office have with the actual patients. And so I'd be curious to know what your perspective is on why and how do you make customers and clients love you? They're coming in for a medical procedure. Medicine can be a little scary for people who have something that they're worried about. How do you make clients love you?
Wow, I don't know that they always love me, but I mean, it is customer or patient satisfaction. But I think it's you need to put yourself in a patient's seat. They're nervous, um, especially with the pandemic. I had a patient come in and I said, "What about all these things that have happened to you in the past?" And, "Oh, I never had those happen. I never had that surgery. I never had that surgery." And I was like, "My medical record says this." The next time she came in, she said, "I remembered all those surgeries when I left your office, but they weren't the important things that happened in my life. The important things were this major cancer surgery and this pandemic." And so remembering where people are coming from, and then you remember where they're coming from, you can put yourself in their shoes. Um, and that's what people appreciate. They appreciate knowing that you know their grandchildren, their grandmother. You ask, "How are you? How's your family? How have you dealt with the pandemic? What's going on right now?" We don't often have extra time to do that, but just a couple words. "How are you doing right now with this?" People appreciate that.
That is really powerful. And like you mentioned, in the midst of a health situation, it's the compassion that sometimes first helps you let your guard down and be honest. And so I love that. And that I know that that's what you guys have always said you built your practice on for 30 years. And um, I'd be curious if you had any advice to share with anyone who's trying to grow either their dermatology practice or just a medical practice in general, kind of where you believe they could help, what they could do to help them grow their business, in addition to if they're trying to get brand new clients, where do you think you start?
Where to start? I think that's all that we've said. Word of mouth. Um, Give lectures, give talks to organizations and groups. They're all going to want to hear from medical professionals right now. They're going to want to hear from you. Everybody wants information. So you can talk about whatever medical problem is your area of expertise. And then they know that you're here. So I think right now it's going to be education. And that's a simple thing to be offer to give talks to groups and organizations. Could still be Zoom. We did a Cancer Society talk recently. But now we can start to do things in person. And people are going to remember if you offered to do that.
Well, I love hearing your story, Janice, and I love what you've been able to build, specifically because I know that you are very passionate about the actual practice and doing things right. But you also, which is a thing of the mind, right? It's the desire to do excellence, work and to be the best in your category, but you also have your heart so intact. And I've seen that and met other clients that you have and people who love you so much. And I think that is really important for anyone who's trying to grow an individual practice, is to just remember that it's, you know, it's your mind and your heart. It's your presence as a person that's really going to increase people's desire to keep coming back for more. So that's how you build a practice over 30 years and get referrals. It's about who you are. And so I would love to share, just if anyone wants to add you on LinkedIn or to get to know, you know, your practice, and maybe even one day follow you to see if maybe they could ever talk to you either as a patient, or maybe they're a practitioner who would want to join your practice, for example. How could people get a hold of you and learn more about Huntington Dermatology?
They can go to our website. That's how you can, Huntington Dermatology. That's in Pasadena. I have an email address. Should I give that out?
You know what, why don't we put it on LinkedIn? Can they add you on LinkedIn, and that way they can send you a message there?
Sure.
Yeah. And that way, if they reach out to you that way, it's professional. And if it seems like it's a good fit, then you can give them your personal email. Because folks, I got to tell you, she's constantly practicing. And so I would get an email like at 7 o'clock at night as she's leaving the office, because she hasn't checked her email all day long. So it's not even the best way to get a hold of her, to be honest with you. So thank you so much, Janice, for being here with us today and sharing, you know, your story and some advice. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future. And for everyone else who's watching right now, we just wish you the best in growing your business from start to sold.